to dress up like a girl, and you can't make me. You can't make me. You can't make me.
You look positively ravishing.
But what are we going to call him? I mean, who ever heard of a goddess named Gilligan?
Why don't you call her Gilliana?
Today we jump into the wild, weird, and funny world of Gilligan's Island. That 1964 show has kept people laughing for decades, and you might think you know every bit of it. Think again, because there are odd secrets hiding under the laughter that will surprise you. From backstage scandals to tiny throwaway details, this list digs up the best surprises you will not expect. Whether you love the show or are just curious, you are in for a treat that packs a punch. 20. The pilot had different cast members. Here is a jaw-dropper for true fans. The very first pilot used different actors for 2 major roles, and that changed everything. Before, the cast we remember was set in stone. Both the professor and Ginger were played by other performers, which is wild to picture. Even stranger, Ginger in the unaired pilot was not the glamorous movie star we know. She was written as a secretary, a low-key background character with a very different feel. Imagine that quiet version walking into those classic scenes instead of the sultry movie star we all picture. So what caused the flip-flop in casting? Test audiences did not like the early mix, and the net were pressed for something more eye-catching. The solution was to bring in Tina Louise to add Hollywood sparkle as Ginger and recast the professor to give him more presence and smarts. Those shifts reshaped the show's chemistry and helped turn Gilligan's Island into the cult classic it became. Fans and critics later pointed to those casting moves as the turning point that made the characters pop and the jokes land better on screen. Think about how small casting choices can change everything. Picture the show without the movie star Ginger, or without the brainy professor who anchored so many plots. It really would not feel the same. But what happened next was even more shocking. The change in faces rewired how every scene felt, and it still surprises fans today. 19. It was almost called Gilligan's Travels. This next fact could have rewritten the whole vibe of the series. Early plans seriously considered the title Gilligan's Travels, a playful nod to Gulliver's Travels and the idea of odd journeys. On paper it seemed clever, since the castaways end up in strange situations far from home. But as development moved forward, the creators realized the title did not match the show's heart. Gilligan's Travels sounded a bit too literary and suggested the crew would roam many lands, while the series mostly stayed stuck on one island. The humor was about failing to leave, not about seeing the world. So the team chose a simpler name that fit the story better. Gilligan's Island said it all in one short phrase, and the theme song fit perfectly with that title. What a small choice to lock in such a huge piece of pop culture. But what came after that choice proved the show needed the simpler title. The name helped the show find its tone and its place in TV history. 18. Gilligan's first name is Willie. This little secret will bend how you think of him. The man everyone calls Gilligan actually had a first name in the creator's notes, and that name was Willie. Yes, Willie. If you watch the episodes, you will never hear it said on screen, not even once. Every character just calls him Gilligan, like it is his only name, and that fits the way he acts in the show. Try picturing him as Willie, though, and suddenly he sounds like a neighbor who cooks on the grill and wears too many Hawaiian shirts. Sherwood Schwartz, the show's creator, confirmed the name in interviews, but he chose not to put it into the scripts. He thought it was unnecessary, and he kept the focus on how the character behaved on screen. Still, knowing this tiny fact changes how you picture Gilligan. The same way learning the professor's real name changes how you see him. It makes the silly moments feel a bit richer, like finding a hidden detail in a painting. By the way, the professor's full name is Roy Hinckley, and that detail pops up in trivia fans love to repeat. So next time you want a deep cut, drop this line: did you know Gilligan's first name is actually Willie? You might blow some minds. And yet the name stayed hidden in creator notes for years. It became a fun trivia fact that only true fans would trade as a secret weapon. 17. The theme song was revised due to fans. Here is one of the most surprising audience wins in TV history. Early episodes used a theme that mentioned the millionaire and his wife, and then ended with the words "and the rest," which lumped the professor and Mary in together like background players. That rubbed fans the wrong way. Viewers began writing letters asking why those two were not named, since they had strong roles in many episodes. The show heard the complaints and changed the lyric, And by season 2 it said the Professor and Mary, and so they were no longer called, and the rest. That small edit mattered a lot to the audience. It showed the producers that fans noticed every line and cared deeply about who got credit. It shows how fans can shape a show, and how a few words and a jingle can stick in people's minds. After the change, the theme song became even more iconic, and most viewers today only remember the updated version. What a strange little win for the fans. Fans had power back then too. Their letters moved the needle and changed what millions of viewers would sing along to. 16. The Lagoon was a studio backlit. Wait, what? Get ready for a real plot twist that ruins the island illusion. That famous lagoon was not in Hawaii or the Caribbean. It was on a studio backlit in Studio City, California, right in Los Angeles. The whole island was a giant set built at the CBS Studio Center. The crew hauled in truckloads of sand, planted fake palms, dug a man-made lagoon, and dressed the set with plants to sell the look on camera. And it worked so well you did not notice unless you knew what to look for. Filming on a backlit had its own headaches, though. The water got freezing cold in the winter because it was not heated, and when Los Angeles had rained, the set turned into a muddy mess that made shooting tough. After the show finished, the lagoon sat and used for years, and other productions borrowed it now and then, but CBS eventually drained it and paved it over. So the Gilligan's Island Lagoon now sits under a parking lot, which is a strangely poetic end for one of TV history's most famous fake islands. It feels like a final curtain on a place that once held so many made-up storms and daring escapes. For a set that created so much fantasy, its real end was oddly plain. Now, it is part of the city grid, a quiet corner under the tires of parked cars. 15. Real island wildlife was used. Get this, the island really felt alive on camera, because the animals were real. The show used live wildlife on set to sell the idea that anything could happen at any time. Birds, monkeys, and other creatures showed up unplanned and often stole scenes just by being themselves. If you ever saw a bird flash across a shot, or a monkey pop into a scene that was not fake, this was before CGI, and the production brought actual animals to make the island feel real. That meant a lot of takes got messy when animals ignored the script and did their own thing. Monkeys wandered off, birds squawked through takes, and crew members had to adapt on the fly. Imagine shooting a supposedly serious scene and a toucan lands on the professor's shoulder like it owns the place. Wranglers were present, but standards were looser in the 60s, so chaos was part of the job. There are famous stories of a monkey sprinting across the lagoon or grabbing at cables and ruining a take. And of course, Gilligan, who drew trouble, found himself chased, jumped on, or at the center of the mess more than anyone. Those surprises made the show feel unpredictable and full of life, which matched its look and tone perfectly. But what happened next made filming legendary, because the animals created moments viewers still laugh about today. Behind the scenes, the cast learned to expect the unexpected and to find ways to work around the chaos. 14. Ginger vs. Mary, and was a real rivalry. Here is a throwdown that aired off camera as much as on screen. Fans still argue which was more loved, Ginger, the glamorous movie star, or Mary and the sweet girl next door. But the tension was not just for ratings, it carried into real life on set. Tina Louise, who played Ginger, reportedly clashed with some co-stars, and her relationship with Dawn Wells, who played Mary, and was said to be tense. They did not always get along, which added real drama behind the cameras. It is wild because the characters were written as stranded friends, yet the actors had normal human conflicts off camera. This proves even the warmest TV cast can face hard moments when cameras are off. That behind-the-scenes friction became another layer of the island story that fans still talk about. 13. Tina Louise hated the show. This one stings because the hit show boxed its own star in. Tina Louise, who played Ginger, openly criticized the show and felt it limited her career opportunities. She wanted serious, varied roles, but felt the glamorous island part typecast her badly and closed doors instead of opening them. As the series ran and the campy tone stuck, Tina grew more frustrated with how narrow her character felt. She even skipped some reunion projects because she did not want to be tied to the role any longer. That choice shocked fans who saw her as the sultry star on screen, but learned she felt trapped by the image. Her stance created headlines and debates, and it changed how some viewers looked at the show in later years. It remains an odd counterpoint to the series' success, and shows how fame can feel complicated. Her honest dislike for the series has surprised fans who love the character, and it added another odd twist to the Gilligan legacy. It showed how success on screen can feel complicated up close. 12. Bob Denver Gilligan advocated for co-stars. This is one of the nicest secret stories from the set. Bob Denver, the man behind Gilligan, pushed back when he thought the cast deserved better recognition. When the theme song left out the Professor Mary and Bob raised concerns because those characters mattered to the show and its fans. He was more than a clumsy comic on camera. He looked out for the whole team behind the scenes too. People say he pushed producers for fairer treatment, more screen time, and even better roles for his fellow actors. Bob also treated crew members with respect and helped keep morale up during tough shoots. In a business full of egos, he was known as a stand-up guy who cared about fairness and camaraderie. That attitude made the set feel closer to a family and kept the cast working well together through chaos and tight schedules. His efforts had real results, and fans later saw small changes that made the ensemble feel more balanced. Bob's quiet leadership is one reason the show kept its heart even when plots got silly or wild. 11. The cast was paid peanuts. This one is heartbreaking despite the laughs. Even though the show kept earning money through reruns, the actors did not receive residual payments for those repeats. At the time, it was common practice, but it still meant the cast missed out on income while their show made profits for the producers. Reruns have run for decades, and the series became a staple of pop culture, yet the actors did not share in those long-term gains. For some cast members, that lack of residuals led to real money problems later on despite their fame. Those stories raised questions about fairness in Hollywood and inspired later changes to how actors are paid. The cast experience became part of a larger conversation about worker rights in entertainment, which affects how deals are made today. Knowing that makes rewatching the show feel more bittersweet for some fans. Today, many actors cite classic cases like this when negotiating contracts and asking for fairer terms up front. The cast story helped push the industry toward better protections for performers. 10. Alan Hale Jr. broke his arm and kept filming. This is a story of grit and dedication that not many know. Alan Hale Jr., the actor who played the skipper, actually broke his arm during filming, but kept working without telling production. He did not want to slow the schedule or cause delays, so he pushed through the pain and shot scenes anyway. The crew hid the injury with clever camera angles, props, and staging, so the show could keep moving. That kind of commitment kept the series on track and showed how far actors will go to protect a production. Cast members remembered his toughness, and the story of his broken arm became a badge of honor among the crew. His quiet sacrifice helped the show meet deadlines and made sure episodes aired on time, which saved money and stress for many people involved. His quiet toughness earned him respect, and that behind-the-scenes tale is still shared by fans who love the skipper. 9. The minnow's name was a playful jab. Here is a bit of TV lore that links the show to a famous TV critic in a gentle way. The boat was named the SS Minnow as a playful nod to a public figure who had called much television a vast wasteland at the time. A minnow is a tiny fish, and the name teased that critique by acting small, but lively and fun rather than serious. What began as a subtle joke ended up being one of the show's most famous bits and tied Gilligan's Island to a key moment in TV history. That small choice left a lasting mark on the series and on how viewers remember the program. 8. The coconut radio was based on real science. This one shows how the professor blended real ideas with joke inventions. Some of the professor's gadgets, like the coconut radio, were silly, but they were loosely inspired by real electrical principles. Radios work by picking up electromagnetic signals and turning them into sound, and early experiments sometimes used simple, everyday parts. So while a coconut radio is an exaggeration, it is not totally made up. It borrows a real basic idea about circuits and antennas. The professor stretched science to fit the story, and that mix of clever thinking and cartoon logic made his inventions feel believable for viewers. Those creative touches helped sell the survival scenes and gave the character a clever edge, even if his devices would not work exactly as shown in real life. The coconut radio remains a fun example of mixing real science with TV imagination, and it still makes viewers smile when they think about it. Fans who are tinkerers still try to mimic the professor's projects as a fun experiment, even though most gadgets will not truly work. That hobbyist spirit shows how much the show inspired creative play, even off-screen. 7. A typo almost changed everything. Here is a tiny slip that almost rewired how people remember a TV classic. Before Gilligan's Island even reached screens, an early TV guide listing nearly printed the name as Gilligan's Island, instead of the correct Gilligan's Island. It sounds like a small goof, but printed guides mattered back then because viewers used them to plan their nights and avoid missing shows. Imagine walking into a TV store or calling a friend to ask about Gilligan's Island, when the actual show used a different spelling that everyone else knew. If that misspelling had spread, it could have created real confusion and even shaped how people talked about the series for years. The mistake was caught before it went wide, which saved the show from a weird identity problem. 6. The pilot was lost for years. This is one of the most dramatic hidden chapters in the series' history. Filmed in 1963, the original pilot did not air during the show's first run and sat unseen for almost 3 decades until it finally aired in 1992. Why did this happen? The network and producers were unsure about the show's setup and decided to rework parts of the series before committing to the episodes we now know. That left the pilot on a shelf while writers recast parts and changed character beats, which led to the familiar cast and tone we all recognize today. When the pilot finally surfaced, fans were stunned to see how different some details looked and how casting choices changed the whole vibe of the show. Watching that early version is like peeking at a rough draft of a famous book. It reveals how ideas evolve and how much editing can shape the final product. For a long time, viewers, the unaired pilot felt like a lost treasure, and for new fans, it became a curious artifact full of alternate lines and odd choices. But the bigger point is this: pilots can be shelved for years back. Then sometimes decisions were slow, and once a show was retooled, those first versions rarely saw the light of day. When the pilot finally aired decades later, it became a must-see for collectors and classic TV fans who love to compare early drafts to the final show. 5. Bob Denver faced legal trouble and spoke publicly about it. This chapter shows a real-life side to an on-screen clown that surprised many viewers. In the 70s, Bob Denver was arrested for marijuana possession, and that event placed him in headlines for something outside of acting. After the arrest, Denver spoke about his experience and reflected on how the laws and penalties felt to someone who had faced them firsthand. He described personal consequences and how the episode changed his views, which he shared publicly as he looked back on that time in his life. We are not here to judge his choices, but to note how the event added complexity to his public image and to how fans saw him off-screen. That period in Denver's life also shows how celebrities sometimes end up at the center of wider conversations about law and society, even when they only meant to work in entertainment. What happened to him connects to a larger story about changing social views and shifting penalties over time, which many people now look back on differently. It is a sober reminder that a beloved TV figure can also have private struggles that shape how they are remembered. The way Denver spoke about his arrest later on humanized him for many fans and sparked bigger conversations about how celebrity life meets real-world laws. 4. The island was threatened by a forest fire. This was a very near disaster that could have destroyed the whole production. In 1965, a brush fire raced toward the outdoor lagoon set, which the crew had built on a California studio backlit to look like a tropical island. The set used lots of flammable materials like wooden huts, leaves, and decorative plants, which made it vulnerable when dry conditions and wind spread flames quickly. If firefighters had not arrived fast, the lagoon and everything around it might have gone up in smoke, and the show could have faced huge setbacks and repair costs. Filming would have stopped, and the finances of the production could have been badly hurt, which would have changed the show's future for sure. Instead, crews and emergency teams worked quickly and contained the blaze before it hit the heart of the set, which let production resume with only minor damage. That close call highlights how shoots on outdoor sets face real-world risks, and how luck and quick response can save a show from disaster. For the cast, crew, and fans, the scare is now a dramatic story that reminds us how fragile productions can be behind the cameras. That fire scare also pushed production teams to think more about safety on outdoor sets, which is an important behind-the-scenes lesson. 3. There were multiple reunion movies. The story did not end when the series left the air. It kept going with follow-up TV movies that let fans see the characters again. Two memorable titles were Rescue from Gilligan's Island from 1978 and The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island for 1981, which brought new adventures and old jokes back to life. Rescue from Gilligan's Island aimed to give an answer to the long-standing question about whether the castaways could ever return home, and it mixed heart with slapstick in a 70s TV way. Watching the same actors reunite years later added layers to the characters, showing how they might react to regular life after being isolated for so long. Then the Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island turned the premise into pure crossover chaos with comedic tricks and wild moments that pushed silly to the max. Those reunion films were not trying to be cinematic masterpieces. They were comfort viewing, delivering nostalgia playfulness and a touch of closure for loyal viewers. They also proved the show's characters had staying power that translated into new formats and TV events long after the original series ended. Fans still watch these movies for the familiar laughs and the odd pleasure of seeing those island stories continue in new, goofy directions. Those reunion films proved even silly TV ideas can find new life and new audiences when revisited with a wink and a nod. 2. The show was canceled to keep Gunsmoke. Here is a brutal example of how network decisions can override a show's popularity. Even though Gilligan's Island pulled solid ratings, CBS chose to hold on to Gunsmoke, which meant Gilligan's Island lost its time slot and ended after 3 seasons. Networks in the 60s made scheduling choices based on many factors, and sometimes favored older hits that seemed safer for viewers and advertisers. So despite loyal fans and steady numbers, Gilligan's Island got the axe, as CBS prioritized the long-running Western, which had a large established audience. It is wild to think a scheduling move like that helped decide which shows stayed on air and which got cut even when they had fans. Yet the cancellation did not stop the series from growing into a cultural icon, thanks to rerun syndication and later reunion projects. The story shows the odd power of programming choices and how TV history can bend on network strategy rather than on pure popularity alone. So next time you watch Gilligan's Island, remember, it almost vanished early on because of a scheduling fight that favored a cowboy drama. The cancellation story is a classic example of TV history being shaped by choices made in boardrooms rather than by the viewers who love the show. 1. A NASA astronaut said the show inspired him. This final fact is charming and a little surprising at the same time. Astronaut Scott Kelly said that watching Gilligan's Island as a child sparked his imagination about exploring strange, distant places, and that idea helped shape his dream of space travel. The show's stories about being stranded in a remote place and working with a small team fired his curiosity about the unknown and what it would feel like to go beyond familiar worlds. Kelly, who later spent a full year on the International Space Station, called those early TV moments part of the spark that nudged him toward a life in exploration and science. It is amazing that a lighthearted sitcom could quietly feed a young person's hunger to explore and to be part of something bigger than themselves. That connection between small-screen fun and real-world achievement is a neat reminder that inspiration can come from unexpected places. So when the professor fiddles with a radio or Gilligan trips and falls, think about how those scenes may have helped shape one explorer's path beyond Earth. Hearing that an astronaut was inspired by the show gives it a strange kind of honor and reminds us that small creative works can nudge big dreams.